Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We are waiting for some more participants to join in, and we would start at 3 sharp. Thank you for your patience. I see the number of participants increasing. We'll all have patience and wait till 3 o'clock, and we'll begin sharp at 3. I see the audience we have the global audience today. We have people from different schools, different countries today. Wow, I see the number increasing. All right, should we begin, Sue? Are we good to go?
Yes,
All
okay.
right, thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Shufali Juneja from SAR Education. I am the moderator for the workshop today. Let me share some norms for the session today. Your active participation is important throughout the session. Right now, I have everyone on mute to avoid any background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. Throughout the presentation, someone on board from our team will be managing the chat functionally. You can enter your questions and your comments in the chat box throughout the presentation. We have a slot of 5-10 minutes in the end of the workshop where we will answer your questions. Are you ready to help your child to become a good reader, but aren't sure where to start? This workshop is for you all, for parents, teachers, education consultants, and special educators. Today, we are delighted to have again with us Ms.Sue Lloyd, the co-author of Jolly Phonics. She has a rich experience in teaching for nearly 30 years now. She has trained teachers on Jolly Phonics in 29 countries. She is the author of many phonic books and resources in the Jolly Phonics program. She's totally dedicated herself towards helping the children who struggle with learning to read. In 2014, she was awarded an MBE for Services for Education. Without much delay, I would like to now turn the time over to our presenter, Sue Lloyd. Thank you. Over to you, Sue.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's lovely to be with you all with this amazing technology. I'm in my little home in the UK and I'm speaking to you all. So I hope I can pass on some of the things I've learned in my years of experience. So perhaps if I can share now our screens, then we can get started. Oops. There we go. Hopefully, can you see that and can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can see, ma'am, and we can hear you as well.
All right, thank you. Well, I started teaching many years ago, and I've realized over the time that actually parents are teachers as well as, teachers. We're all naturally teachers because from the day our children are born, we're doing so many things to encourage them to learn to speak, to walk, to brush their teeth or whatever, all natural skills. But of course, when you come to teaching children to read and write, that's not a natural activity. And so really, we have to have some kind of understanding about how to do it. There are some snags with being parents, because actually not many of us can remember how we were taught to read and write. We've kind of been doing it for a long time. And as literate adults, we can read words that we've never read before. And especially if it's in our vocabulary, we can usually get the words. And we do know from years of experience that good readers are good at decoding. That's working out the words for themselves. But they may not be actually very aware of how they're doing it. They've done it for so long, they just do it. And of course, this isn't a problem if you're a parent, and it only becomes a problem if you want to teach your child or children to read, and it's the same with teachers. So it is important to realize that we don't really remember very well. I certainly didn't. So how did we, let me just check this a minute. Yeah, so how did we read? Let's have a look here. Here we have 3 words that you've never seen before, but you can have a go at reading them. I hope you're having a try now. Did you get for the first one? Brifferton, Brifferton. Yeah, fairly straightforward. What about cloptering? Yeah, it's, that's fairly reasonable. And then you come to the last one and you go is that EA going to be E or A? Is it going to be like read or read? Stredaby or stredaby. And actually, you don't know which one it is going to be. And that's for adults and children. So if the words aren't in your natural spoken language, and it's a word that you've never heard of before, you are sometimes able to get it spot on. And other times you have to actually ask. And that's what the children have to learn to do. Now, that is the code for reading. Now, the code for writing is different in that you know the word you want to write because it's in your head, but you've got to be able to hear the sounds and choose the right letters for those sounds. So just imagine, if you've got a pencil handy, you could even write it down yourself. Just imagine, I tell you, I come from Quellington, Quellington. And my family come from Stipeness. You've never heard of these before, Stipeness, because I've made them up for a start. Or what about Kedingby? How would you write Kedingby? Okay, well, let's have a little look. And you will see here. Now, Quellington, I think you probably might have got that, especially if you know in place names in the UK that there are a lot of them that end in ton, and we sort of go tun, Quellington. So you might not have had the double letter, but I hope you probably would. What about here? Stipeness. Well, stipe could be spelt in different ways. You could have an IPE. So you wouldn't be quite sure there. You would know that the st would be quite reliable. The ness is reliable. It's the I that is causing trouble. Which I is it? And here down with Kedingby, you might well have put Kedingby, which would have been a fairly natural way of doing it. But unfortunately, this time the EA has an E sound, like in when we write bread and red and head. So again, even for adults, being able to write every word accurately by listening for the sounds is not possible. So what is our code of English like? Well, you know, we speak in words and the words are made up of sounds and we can identify those sounds. This was one of the breakthroughs in the past, thousands of years ago. And then we put letter or letters to represent the sounds. So definitely a code. And the code for reading is, if you see the word dog, you look at the letters and you go D or G, and you can hear dog. You need to say the sounds. If you said the letter names and you go D-O-G, that doesn't give you anything. So you do need to say the sounds. So that's how the reading works. What about the writing? Well, you know the word you want to write that word dog. You've got to hear that it's made up of D, O, and a G, and then put letters for those sounds. And that's the basic principle behind the code. And that's what the children have to be taught from the beginning, how to use this code. There is a bit of a snag because English is the most complicated alphabet of all languages that use that Roman alphabet. So extremely complicated. Whereas if you have languages, a bit like Spanish, Italian, Finnish, German, they're much easier. They have a much better sound symbol relationship, much easier to learn. They're called simple alphabetic codes. But when you've got a complicated one, it's so important that it's taught carefully in a structured, careful way. I mean, if you look back in our past mistakes, because it was complicated, people sort of said, well, don't bother with doing the phonics, just learn the words. And there's huge danger in that because that will fail so many children. So it is a complicated code. We need to teach it in a step-by-step progression, which we do in Jolly Phonics. Why is this complicated code? Well, for a start, in English, we speak with 44 sounds, whereas other languages have far fewer. But there's only 26 letters to represent them. So that's your first snag. You're in trouble now. So we have to use 2 letters or even more to represent those other sounds. And then we have had a lot of influences from other countries, and several of them invaded and brought their words and their representations of the sounds and so on. And so we've got a bit of a mix there. I mean, if you look, for example, here, you can see the letters CH. Now, the usual one is the ch sound, and that came from the Anglo-Saxons. So that helps you with chop and chips. And we learned that first of all in Jolly. But we also have the CH having a k sound. And we got that from the Greeks. And that helps us to read Christmas and chemist. And then a bit more, we've got a sh sound for the CH. And that comes from the French and the champagne and machine and so on. So you can see how we've used these different ways of representing the sounds, the influences from other countries. And even though the Greeks didn't invade us, they had a huge amount of influence on us. They were a very advanced country. And 2 centuries ago, we printed our first dictionary. And of course, once it goes into print, it rarely gets changed. So that's why it's difficult. Now, most people understand the single letter sounds of the alphabet, but it's when you come to the digraphs that things start to go wrong, particularly the vowels. So here's the first vowel digraph. Digraph is 2 letters to make 1 sound. That's because we've not got enough letters. So there's the digraph for the A sound, and we use the letters AI, the first one that we teach. Another program might use a different one, but this is the first one we use. And so we teach the children that this A and the I don't say A, I, they say A. And that will help them to work out rain, R, A, N. So that's that teaching. Then later on, we come along and we teach them another A way of saying the sounds for the A sound. And that is the split digraph, the A hop over E. So a consonant goes between there, but those 2 vowels are making the sound. So that helps us with date, d, a, t, date. And then later on, we have the AY that has an A sound, like in the way the word say, s, A. So you see, we're building up bit by bit, but you see how complicated it is already. We've got 3 ways of writing the same sound, but that's not all. Look what happens. We have even more ways of representing that sound. Now, these ones, fortunately, aren't in so many words. So the first 3 are the more common. But occasionally, this letter A, the A, it nearly always has an A sound. But every now and again, it has an A sound. Then we've got the EI with an A sound, like in faint, vain, and veil. Then we've got an EY, and it comes at the end of they, grey, and obey. Here we've got 4 letters to make the A sound, so it's getting more tricky. And that comes in the words like ate, nay, and slay. And here's a bit of French influence, the ET with an A sound, as in ballet, sorbet, and buffet. Here, down here, the EA, this EA nearly always has an E sound. Most words are E, but sometimes it's E, which you've seen before just now, like in bread and head, or red, if you read it. Here, it has an A sound, and usually one of the vowels does do the talking, and this time it's the second one. It's an A sound, as in great, break, and steak. Now, fortunately, there's only about 3 of those words, so they don't have to learn many, but you do have to learn that. And then we've got the AIGH has a word, is a way of saying A, as in straight. But I think that's the only one. So you see, these are far fewer, but they still need to it. Not so much for reading. With the first ones, for reading, that's probably enough for code cracking. But for spelling, you need to have a good understanding of these as well. We tend to learn them in patterns. So if you're doing the EIA, then you learn several of the words that have that pattern. This is the English alphabetic code that I've made for you, and which you can download. I've made it available. And so you can see quite easily here. Here's this A down here, the AIA. And the first way of representing the A that we teach in Jolly, which is in the green, all these green ones are the first way we teach it. Then a little bit later in Jolly, in the 2nd and 3rd term, we teach the pink coloured ones. And the other ones are extra ones that come, we do more in Jolly Grammar, which is more for spelling and so on later on. But with the greens and the pink knowledge, that's usually enough for reading, especially if the words are in your vocabulary. So you can see how this code works out. And there'll be even more up there. You know, I mean, it's amazing. With accents changing as well, makes more sounds available. So What are the skills that we need for reading and writing? Well, one of the major ones is being able to speak the language and have a vocabulary and a language comprehension. And this is something that is taught naturally. Parents at home are always speaking to their children. They learn the mother tongue, and they pick it up naturally just by being spoken to and trying to speak themselves. If you want a knowledge of English, and I think that the fact that you've got people listening to me now, you probably have English yourself. So if you want to have your children to be good at English and good at speaking English, then you need to speak to them in English as much as possible and develop their vocabulary and their understanding, so that when they can read and they can work out the words, they understand what they are. In Jolly Phonics, we of course are concentrating mainly on the phonics and how to work the words out. And in order to be able to understand the words, you've got to be able to read them first if you're reading. So the skill for reading, of course, is fluent decoding, k, at, cat. And for writing, the skill is encoding, which is taking the word cat and hearing it's made up of a k, at. And another skill you will need for writing is the letter formation and pencil control. But those are the basic skills. They're all essential and all important. I love this chart. It was made by an American lady, Nancy Young. And I like it because it represents every class I have ever had and I've taught reading and writing to. And you just have at the top here, this 5% of the greens. These children have absolutely no trouble with learning to read and write, whatever method you use. It's almost as if they've done it in another life. Then you have the next 35%, and with a bit of phonics, they will come through well. Then you come to the 40 to 50% down here, the orange ones. And these children, if you don't teach the code absolutely explicitly, they will find it much more difficult, and a lot will struggle and quite a few will fail. And then down to this bottom, the red ones, these children absolutely must have that structure. That's the only way they can cope with learning to read and write. And if we don't provide it, we have caused their problems. Now, the problem is, of course, you might say, well, these don't need that much phonics and these do. What should we do? Well, in a class, it's best to teach the structure to all the children, because although these green children could manage perfectly well without, they take much longer. Whereas if you teach the structure, they are so fast, they're through it in no time, and they've got the decoding and they're sorted and they're reading anything. So it's an advantage to teach the structure and make sure that they do learn properly. And I think this is important for parents to understand, because, you know, we all think our children are bright and lovely and wonderful, and that they're going to have no problems at all. But I can assure you, they might all be bright, but some will have troubles. So how is it these green ones can do so well when you're not teaching strong synthetic phonics? Well, these children tend to have quite a good memory. So even if they're being shown words and told words, they can pick up quite a few, and their memory is very good. And then also at the same time, they might be a child who sort of sees when they've seen the word mum on the page, there's a at the beginning and a at the end. They've got good ability to hear those sounds, and they see there's a letter for them. And then they might see that man, oh, that's got a with it. And then perhaps dad, there's a d at the beginning, d at the end, d. And bit by bit, you know, they crack the code. You know, there's the dad, and then dog, well, there's a d there. And even with, you know, see the word church, it's got a ch sound, a ch at the beginning, a ch at the end. oh, you know, the two letters, and just quietly, logically, they've got good logic, they are working it out, and so they can get there. And with a bit of phonics, they're helped even more. So they've got the skill, they've got the good memory, and they've got the good ear for hearing the sounds in words, and being able to hear the word when they have said the sounds. So if they've gone d or g, they can hear dog. Whereas these children haven't got those strengths. And sometimes they've got high intelligence, but they might not have the natural ability to hear the sounds. And we learned years ago that if we don't teach them to hear those sounds, then they can't crack the code. And if they don't hear it naturally, they're in difficulties. So this is the typical class. But remember, if you've got a child that is struggling, it is nearly always because they haven't been taught in a strong code way, and they have got the difficulties of hearing the sounds. And if somebody doesn't tune them in, then they are in serious problems. So I like that very much. If you are teaching at home, you need to have a purpose of why you want to do it. Is it because you're always going to educate your children? I don't know how much of this happens in India. Perhaps somebody might tell me later. But it does happen in some countries, particularly America, where they like to do all the teaching. And the children don't go to school, but they actually get educated at home. You might be one of those, in which case you really need to know how to teach synthetic phonics really well. You might want to teach your children to read and write in English before starting school, and it's quite possible to do this. And you need to understand how to do it, which I shall be covering. You might just want to be a support to the school if your child is going to be doing Jolly Phonics, say, or a synthetic phonics program. You want to just sort of be there to help and understand how it all works. So that is a useful skill to have, to know how it works. Or you may just want to lay a good foundation for when they start school, so that they can actually realize that there is a code to reading and writing. And, you know, if you say the sounds, you know, mouse, can they hear mouse? If they can, you know they're going to be all right on the decoding. And if they're encoding, can they hear that, you know, sort of hot is made up of a ot. So you can develop those skills early on, which is very useful for decoding. If your child was going to a school that did all whole word memorizing or rote learning, I would say alarm bells need to ring, because that might not suit your child. So be very careful and when you make your decisions about that. There are potential problems with homeschooling, I think, apart from the socializing with lots of children. Some children can develop a resistance to being taught reading and writing. Usually if parents have got a sort of reasonably good control of their children, so if they say, it's 5 minutes before it's time to pack up your toys before dinner, you know, then say, now it's time to pack up, they do it without any fuss. So that when you want to do your lessons, say, come on, we're going to do our activities now, and they do it. Then you're going to find they're fine. It needs to be a fun experience for them and you. Often as parents, we do try a bit too hard, you know, we're so keen for them to be good and do well. It can be tempting to race and try and get them to learn faster, or you know, I've told you that yesterday. So it's more difficult to be patient. So you do have to take your temperament into account as well. If parents are going to do the serious teaching, you do need to understand the body of knowledge I'm going to tell you, and the skills and structure. So, but there are advantages to teaching at home, because you get quality time with your child. It's a lovely time. You can get a wonderful relationship. You're helping them, they're helping you, and they're learning and they feel good about it. And the advantage of parent is that you can easily adjust your teaching to suit the child. You know, some children can learn 3 letter sounds in a day with no problem, and other children need at least 3 days to learn 1. So you've got this range, and the beauty of when you're just dealing with the one child, or perhaps 2 if you've got twins or children very close in age, you can see it so easily. But when you've got a whole class full, it's very busy and difficult to see. You can spot mistakes if they're not holding their pencil properly. You can sort of gently guide them. You know, you've shown them how to do it, guide them. And you've got flexibility, you know, if they're a bit poorly, they've got a bit of a cold, well, you can cut your lesson a little short. And, you know, it's a wonderful, if you're seeing they're losing attention, you can sort of do activities where they're more involved. Oh, I think you should get the letter sounds out today. Can you put them out? Right, you know, point to the app, you know, things like that. So you can make it both of you working at it, which is very empowering. Do methods of teaching count? Well, they jolly well do. I found that out years ago. And there's so much science and research done, more research into the teaching of reading than anything else. And the conclusions are very strongly that when you do it with whole word memorizing, more comprehension, more predicting of what the words will be rather than decoding, it's a least effective method. It's far more difficult, and it is definitely causes more failures. Synthetic phonics, systematic synthetic phonics, is the most effective. There isn't a better one. If you get the decoding and the encoding sorted, you've got the reader and writer. If you mix it up, you then reduce the effectiveness of the synthetic phonics. So if you have a child, you're going to do the 2 things, and you teach some words by sight and then some letter sounds, and then you give the child a reading book that has words that they can't work out because you haven't taught those letter sounds yet. They then, especially the weaker ones that are not so good at decoding, they find it doesn't work. And that in the end, they start not bothering to do the decoding because it's harder, and they sort of try and guess the words rather than work them out. And as soon as you've got guessing in a child, you know you've got a reading problem developing. So it is important to not mix the methods, to stick to synthetic phonics until you've got a reader that's reading anything. How do I know? Well, my classroom experience has told me this, in that I go back a long time. I was teaching in 1970s, the mid-1970s, and our school changed the method of teaching. Our head of department was worried that some children weren't reading well further on. And she looked at them and saw that they didn't know the letter sounds well. They didn't work the words out, they guessed. And so she said, let's not bother to teach whole words. Let us just teach decoding, how to work the words out, and make sure those children do know those letter sounds. And when we did that, we were a large school, 3 classes all doing the teaching. We all saw this huge improvement. And then later on, it was registered on standardized reading tests that all children did, and they had made a huge improvement. And then we had another interesting experience fairly soon afterwards. A researcher wanted us to do his program, and his philosophy was that you should teach the children to hear the sounds in words before you start to read them, read and write. Teach them that. And it was a teacher's nightmare, this program, because it was all worksheets and tape recorders, and you had to keep on jumping up and putting another child on the tape recorder, finding the program, just impractical. But what it did teach us was that some children hear those sounds easily and others didn't, but you can teach them all to hear the sounds. And of course, in hindsight, I look back, of course, you've got a code that's made up of sounds. And if you can't hear those sounds, you can't possibly crack the code. So everything has to be done by memory. And that's just an impossibility in the end. And so you become a poor reader. So that was an eye-opener. And of course, This time on the standardized reading tests, the below average children, now with the understanding of how the code works, went into average, and the average went above average. So they all improve from that experience. I like this because with research now, and I've read an awful lot over the years, it's quite fascinating. They can now take scans of the brain while a child is reading. And this is a child's brain, one child's brain, the top part of the brain, that was taken, the scan was taken before, while they were a bad reader, poor at reading. They'd learned whole words and that they weren't blending, they were just a weak reader. And you can see that if you're learning a word by just looking at it, it is stored in the right hemisphere. It's the right hemisphere that works, which is the visual side of our brain. The decoding side of our brain is the left hemisphere. Now here, the left hemisphere is quite small. Then the child is given strong synthetic phonics and is taught how to decode and work words out and becomes a good reader. And look what's happened. The right hemisphere that was the visual has stopped doing it so much, and so it's got smaller. And the left hemisphere has got much larger because it's doing a lot of decoding and getting the meaning. And so you can see the brains will develop according to how we teach them. So it is so important to teach the decoding because that is what good readers do. All strong literate readers, if you could read those words I put up earlier, you're a literate person, you've got the code sorted. And so it's so important to get that left hemisphere. The more you use it, the more it grows. And if you don't use it, it doesn't, it shrinks. And there's a link here if you want to see some more talk about the evidence, that it's well worth watching that. So Jolly Phonics is a synthetic phonics program. So it teaches the alphabetic code right from the beginning. No whole word memorizing, always decoding. It's structured step-by-step approach. And we start with simple letter sounds and we gradually increase to the digraphs and more complicated ones. And the really important thing is that we avoid asking children to read words that they cannot decode. That is such a strong principle. As soon as you go deviate from that, you start to lose some children. So this is an overview to give you an idea of what you have to teach. Here we've got the body of knowledge, the letter sounds. These letter sounds need to be learnt really, really well, one after the other. And also some tricky words. We have coloured, I've coloured them sort of a red orangey colour because by the time they've learnt all those, they are able to read the orange readers or the red level readers, the decodable readers. And when they have the Y with an E sound, the yellow ones, they can read the yellow readers. The green represents the green readers, the blue readers, and the purple, the new ones, the purple readers. And our aim is to make sure that all the children know in their first year, or if you're teaching at home, you can teach at the pace that you want to teach at, and making sure that they master it as they go on. If they haven't mastered the first three, you don't go on to the next ones. That's a luxury of being able to teach at home. So the tricky words are words that you can decode, but they don't give a correct pronunciation because they've got a letter sound correspondence that's unusual, doesn't come up very often and hasn't been taught yet. So here we've got the word I, and it's actually the capital of the letter I as well, and it says I. When we come to the, you wouldn't teach it until the TH digraph, which has got a sound. You wouldn't teach that until they can blend it. Well, the doesn't give the word the. If you listen, we swallow that E and we go So they just have to learn that there is the. And then you've got the he, she, we, me, be. The beginning of the words are straightforward. It's the E. E usually on its own has an E sound, so they would sound it P-E, but we have to say, no, it's he. You have to learn that bit. It's unusual. So they learn those, then was is was, and so on. So they have to learn those because they come up so often that we can't write a story without them. Here you can see a bit more closely with these letter sounds, teaching one at a time. The children can be offered words to work out. And as each letter sound is taught, more words become available. And by the time they've got down to R, nearly 2,000 words become available. So with the knowledge of 42 things, symbols, they can work out nearly 2,000 words, and it'll be more if these are more suitable for children. On the way through these 42 letter sounds, you're teaching the blending of words, and then you go on to phrases and sentences. You're also teaching them to hear the sounds in words that the sounds, so that's for writing. So now this is a word bank, so this will give you the structure, which is very useful. And you can download this. I've made it available. As each letter sound, you can see the order starts with us, as we did on that previous slide, no words available. Then we come to A, there's only one and it's underlined, and that's because it doesn't give a pure pronunciation, so you wouldn't use that straight away. Then we have the T. Well, when you've got the three sounds, you can read the words sat and at. So they can blend those. Then with the I, you can go to sit, it, and it. So you see how you grow like Topsy. More words become available for blending and working out. And I can tell you, the better your child is at blending, the easier they find it, the easier reading is. And then you only need to concentrate on comprehension and vocabulary. And remember, when words have been blended a few times, they become known. It just is stored in the brain. It's processed and stored in the brain, and it's just known. And then you only use blending for new words. And this is very, very powerful. And this word bank is excellent for developing the understanding of how this structure works, the progression. So now we get to reading books. We've got to that last letter sound. That's one way of representing the main sounds of English. With those 42 letter sounds, these reading books can be used. My recommendation is for the children who struggle to learn those letter sounds, don't rush on, use the orange readers, because these first three books only use the 6 letter sounds that they learned in the first place. So that makes it much easier for them. The red level readers use the 42 letter sounds and the 12 tricky words, and they're decodable. So there's for the children who learn straightforward and are above average. That's your structure. And of course, most things you can do very cheaply at home, but you do need to have access to reading books, and decodables are important. Then we have the Y, which first of all, they learn as a Y sound, like in yes, but then they learn it as an E sound, like in sunny. So with that knowledge and some more tricky words, the next level can be learned, the next reading books, level, the yellow level. You get more words on the page, so they're gradually learning more. Then with the next level of, excuse me, too much talking. With the next level, the split digraphs or hop over E's, you still need the 2 vowels, but there's a consonant between them. So they have to learn that when they see those 2 letters, they have to say A, E, I, O, or U. More tricky words, and then they can read the green level. So now you've got longer sentences, more on the page, they're building up their knowledge. 14 new alternative spellings, and more tricky words, and we have now, well over 3,000 words available. And then they can read the blue levels. With these readers, we've got some that are non-fiction, some are all about Inky Mouse, and some are more general stories. So you've got the 3 types of books. There are 18 books in each level. There are other decodable readers, which I might mention later on. Here we've got our latest ones that use these letter sounds, the 6 alternatives at the end there. These books are quite advanced. So if your child hasn't got much English, I wouldn't worry with those until they have. They are now available as e-readers, on the computer. So if you're interested in that, you can go to the Jolly Learning website so you can see about those. The aim, of course, through all the teaching, is by the time you get to the blue and purple readers, they should be so good at decoding, they are independent readers. That's when our children, the parents used to come in and say, oh, I'm amazed. They're just reading the Radio Times, what's on television tonight, or they're reading Dad's paper. So they become really fluent. And of course, the green ones just go really quickly. The others get there, they just take more time. They need exactly the same teaching, the same code, but they just need a bit longer to learn those letter sounds and get the blending going. And of course, they're prepared for independent reading. And of course, when you come to independent reading, you do find there are some words that are not quite so easy, and you have to have a few hints. So here we are, here's some helpful hints. The letter OW has 2 sounds. It has the O as in snow, and the ow as in cow. So when they come to it, they see the OW, they've got to try one way, and if that doesn't work, try the other way, and that helps them. And there's a lot of that in the phonics, but they wouldn't come to that until they've been taught those. Sometimes our pronunciation is close, but it's not exact. Now, if you take the word lemon, if they were sounding it out, blending it out, L-E-M-O-N, lemon. Well, we don't say lemon, but if you've got the word lemon in your vocabulary, the children just adjust to that and there's no problem. That kind of word would go in a decodable. It's a little tweak they have to do. Whereas these next 3 words that don't give a pure pronunciation would not go into the decodables. They'd be, wait until the children are really fluent readers. They would blend it like this: S-or-s-age, sausage. We don't say sausage anymore, we probably used to, but if they know that word sausage, it's in their vocabulary, then they will, they will get to it. With door, they would go door. Well, in some accents, people do say door. Go to Scotland, and it's much nearer door than door. With the warm, warm, warm. Well, warm is warm. So they have to make this little leap. But once they've done it once, sometimes you have to help them. If it's not in their vocabulary, you definitely have to help them with the pronunciation. So you have, that's the teaching. And often we teach about the short vowels and long vowels. If the short one doesn't work, try the long one. So here, f-ind, find, that doesn't make a word. F-I-nd, find, you do. Apron, apron, and you can get there. So it's useful to know that, but the thing with decodable readers, you don't ask the children when they're just tentatively learning to do those kind of things. It's only for when they've become really good, they've gone through all the decodables and they're independent readers. So that was the skill of reading. But what about the skill of writing? Now, some of the things are similar. If we have a look here, we can see that they still need to learn the 42 letter sounds, not only to recognize them, but they've got to be able to write them. They've got to hold their pencil correctly and form it correctly. They need to be taught to listen for those sounds. This is called phonemic awareness, so that if you want to write the word, hat, you can hear it's at, bus, b-us. And holding up this finger for each sound, I don't know why it helps, but it keeps them active, and it does seem to make it easier for them. But then they can count, if they want to, how many sounds in the word. So it's a useful little activity. Holding the pencil correctly is very important. You know, if they get into bad habits early on, it is very, very difficult to stop it. So if we can get it right from the beginning, it's much better. And this is, parents can help here enormously. So if the children learn to wiggle their fingers, hide the two, the little finger and the next one, and we only use those three, the pencil, I don't know if you can see all right, the pencil goes between the thumb and the first finger. The third finger stops it falling on the ground. The hand goes on the table, and then they make the movement come from the pencil, from the knuckles. They've got to get these knuckles going out. And we kind of liken it to froggy legs. And we say to the children, get your froggy legs ready. So it's important to get that hold and be a little bit fussy. It saves an awful lot of trouble. And it's the same with formation. Get the formation of the letter correct from the beginning, because it makes it so hard for a child if they've got used to doing it the wrong way. And then joining up letters is dreadful. So dictation is the easiest and best fun way of teaching writing. It sounds terribly grown up. And with the children, we tend to say, listen and write. So basically, the first thing they do after they've learned a few letter sounds, we do a little listen and write, and you call out a sound, and they have to write the letter for it. Now, as a parent, you can see exactly if they can do it correctly or not. And so you've got a lot of information there, and you can see if their pencil formation is correct or the pencil hold is okay. And, you know, so it's lovely when you've got one-to-one. Then, of course, once you've got them able to hear those sounds and you're going on dictating them or getting them to listen and write, you can start to dictate a word or two. And then later on go into phrases and then into sentences. So you build up bit by bit. A little every day is very powerful. Don't go on too long. Always be willing to quit and leave them hungry. They might want to do more. No. We'll do some more tomorrow. You know, leave them hungry. The word bank is suitable for words for dictation, but we tend to avoid the K and the CK words, because the children know the K. They know these two letters have the K sound together and singly, but they don't know which one to use. So we tend to keep to the caterpillar K, the C, in the beginning. And then they do also double letters. We keep off double letters because they don't know which ones are double. So use the words from the word bank, but keep off double letters and K words or CK words. In class, and this is with English, not as a foreign language, as mother tongue or in English schools, this is what we would expect after 42 letter sounds. And that would take, 9 to 10 weeks. Obviously, the tricky word I has been learned. Went, they listen. This child doesn't know that horse has an E on the end. Riding, the only I they've learned is IE so far. You could pull them up with the at the end, ing, they've learned is NG, but they haven't got it there. That was fun. The was isn't spelt accurately, but if you haven't taught it as the tricky word for spelling, then you wouldn't worry about it. And this is what they can do more towards, after 2 terms. They can say exactly what they say. Now, of course, if they haven't got English to that extent, then you would stick to dictation much, much longer and gradually improve their spoken English as much as possible. And they pick up the English from their reading as well. So, but this is, you see, I slept at my friends', I play with my pram, I went for a walk. I went to the pictures it's supposed to be. I watched the black beauty. Now, isn't that sweet? You know, they can say exactly what they want to say. And it's not, the spelling's not accurate to start off with, but you can read it. It's very empowering. And after, I used to worry, you know, is this going to spoil their spelling? But spelling becomes more important once they've got the reading going very well. And we used to find our children on average, when they were tested, were a whole year ahead with this type of teaching than they were before. So on average, the spelling is better. But of course, the ones who struggle, it's probably better to keep them to dictation more than concentrate on that. But it certainly gets them writing. So here we can see the materials that we developed. Interestingly, this is unusual in publishing. See, I was an ordinary teacher in an ordinary school, and I met this chap, Christopher Jolly. I was telling him how important it was that we should teach the children the code and how to work the words out, and you get much higher results. And so he was interested in linguistics and spelling and so on. And then I find out he's a publisher. And then after we've met up again, and he's tried it and tested it and researched it. And one day he says, I want you to write it. And this is the book that I wrote first of all. And my colleague, Sarah Wernham, joined me. And we've both been doing this ever since. And so this was the first thing that we wrote, the Phonics Handbook. And most of the teaching can be done just with that. If you are going to seriously teach at home, this is what teachers would be using in a school. There's more detail there. And you really ought to familiarize yourself with it. So there's a teacher's book and there's 3 pupil books. So I would recommend that. But if you're if you're not quite so serious, I'll show you other materials that are suitable for the home. Now, here we've got the basic skills. You've got to get all those letter sounds learned really well. You've got to form them correctly, get that blending going, so working out the words, identifying those sounds in words, the phonemic awareness, net, et, you've got to be able to hear that. Tricky words we don't touch until we've taught the enough letter sounds correspondences. So we usually start about the TH, teaching the tricky words. So they've got the digraph and so those are your basic. So first of all, the first 4 skills are taught, and then later the tricky words. These are the groups that we teach the letter sounds in. You can see that we cover the digraphs before we finish the single letters. And we did this deliberately because people would say, oh, the digraphs are too hard. And so they would miss them out. So it's like teaching half a code. Some children will manage, but the rest will be failed by it. So they do need to know about digraphs and how to recognize them. These are the materials that are more suitable for homeschooling, for teaching at home. You often have alphabet books, and people often teach the letter names with alphabet books, which has a purpose, but it doesn't teach them reading and writing. It's not good for reading and writing because the code is made up of sounds. So if you want to help them with reading and writing, you want them to know the letter sounds really well. And I do recommend that when you do start to teach letter sounds, you don't teach the names at the same time, because I've seen what happens that some children, they muddle it up. Is it a S sound or is it an S? And that dither happens and they don't instantly go to the sound. So be aware, don't teach the names at the same time as the sounds. And you don't then get that muddling up. They do need to know the names in the end because we use the names to talk about the letters and dictionary work and so on. But for reading and writing, it's the sounds. Then we have jolly stories. So if you like reading stories to your children, this is fine because each letter sound comes up, but it does require a fair bit of understanding of English. So if they're not very good at that and you don't read English stories, you know, little stories to them regularly, then that may not be quite so useful. Jolly songs, they're full of, they're good fun. And then we've got 7 activities books that have got stickers, and they're very suitable for the home. So let me have a look a bit more closely. This is that first letter sound book. So basically we've got some pictures so that you can talk about the pictures and see how well they know what they are. Then at another time, perhaps you might sort of say, look, see this letter? It's got a S sound. And you can say, look, feel the shape. Look, put your finger there and feel and go round. Oops, sorry. Didn't want you to do that. So you start to feel it. It's got a S sound. Then maybe a bit later on, just depending on how your child reacts, you can say, look, that this sun, listen carefully. Sun. Can you hear that S sound at the beginning? And, you know, if they can, we'll then say, well, look, see that letter? It's the same letter, isn't it? So that letter has a S sound. And you do a little bit of this, a little bit every day, just for pleasure and fun. You can do that sitting on the lap. You don't have to come up to the table or anything. And just enjoy it like you do what you would with an alphabet book or a story book. You can also do other little things. Now, can you point to the T? Can you point to the A? Or can you point to the tint? Can you point to the ant? And then a bit more, tuning the ears in. Which one is the S, A, N? And hopefully they can hear sun and point to it. Which one is the ink? And they get the ink. So you're tuning them in to hear that. And then later on even, you know, sun, can you hear the sounds S, A, N? And if you've actually covered those letters, then they can actually read it. So it's got lots of little things that you can do with it. This is the storybook that I was saying. So you can see it's fairly complex. It's quite sweet little stories. And it's really about Inky Mouse, who's one of our characters. And dear old Inky Mouse knows how to read and write. She goes with her camera because she wants to make a sound book, a scrapbook. And she wants to put things that have got a S in first of all. And so she wants to take the picture of Snake. So there we are. She's taking the picture of Snake. So this is how the story goes. And you could at home get a scrapbook and then put the letter S in the middle of it. And then you could put pictures of things, cut out, you know, from a catalogue or something, get your child to cut out things that have got that S in it. And it goes onto the page with the S letter sound. There are other little activities here. In the story and in the picture are lots of things that have that S. You can get the children to go over the letter and follow the arrows down the bottom here saying S. Here, at the bottom here, we've got some words that you could say the sounds and they can see if they can hear the word. In the beginning, do it together. Look, or do it first of all for them. S, A, N, sun. Let's say that together. S, A, N, sun. And so then can you point to the sun? So you're tuning them in. And the bottom one, spot. And hopefully they might hear spot and you can point to the spot on the snake. So that's developing the blending skill, just auditorily. Here we've got some words and you can actually encourage the children to hear the sounds in words. So snake has got 4 sounds. There's 5 letters, but there's 4 sounds. You've got S, N, A, K. And the letters are written to represent the sounds underneath, very in the small, so that parents or teachers or children can see that it's made up of 4 sounds and the way of representing those sounds is there. So so you've got the activities. In the beginning, you might just read the story. And then you might find they're not interested that much. So the next, leave it for a while and then try the story. So you have to be adaptable according to the age your child is and how well they enjoy it. You could just as easily use the previous book and just point to the letter and say when you see this, and just go from there. So you can make it as much fun as you want or as direct as you want. This is the song, and they're very popular with the little ones. They want it again and again, so watch out, it might drive you a little mad, but they are popular. The advantage of the purpose of these really is that you hear the sounds, it's developing the vocabulary, and the pronunciation and everything, which is very useful, but don't think it teaches them to read or write. It just teaches them to be aware of the sound, and they love singing and gives them vocabulary. Then we have the activity books. Now, these are lovely for home because they're sticker books. And if there's time at the end, I hope I can show you the whole of the book because it's lovely. It's very sweet. It's not just the page for learning the sound, but also activities that practice it. So here we have a little story about the snake and making the scrapbook. And then we have things here that have us in. Has sun got us? Well, then you need to join it. Has snail got us? Well, the joining's done for you. Has bee got us? No, so you don't join it. So you're tuning them in, and then there's some letters for them to practice at the bottom, and the guidance is available. By the time they get to the end, they should have learned 6 letter sounds, and with luck, they might be able to blend words that use them, like it, in, ap, nap. So the words are provided for you there. So it's a very useful, fun way of teaching at home. So your daily lesson, you need to find a sort of regular time for teaching, I think, if you're going to do it seriously. So, and young children do well when they are trained to do things. And in the beginning, you might want to just do activities. So perhaps in the middle of the day, we'll have a little snack and a drink. Let's come to the table because it's activity time and I've got something for you to cut up. I've got something for you to stick. I've got something for you a story to look at. So you do a little something. Don't be too long, leave them hungry. And then the next day at the same kind of time, if you can keep to the same kind of time, and then gradually they just get used to it. And if you leave them hungry, they want to come to the lesson. And keep it short and active. So don't make it all you talking like I'm doing now. But people do, they do their own little bits as well. So they have a bit of something, you do a bit of it, and so on. You do want to plan in advance, get yourself with the materials ready. The young children, they do lose concentration easily. So do something active, change your activity, move on to something else, and they will jump to something different and love it. But if you stick too long, you will start to lose them. And what I mean by down here, encourage success. Well, don't be too ambitious. Don't go on to new letter sounds if they haven't actually mastered the first ones. That's your luxury at home, is that you can go at the pace your child picks it up naturally. Their own natural ability, their memory. Just be guided by them to some extent. Don't be too ambitious, because if you're ambitious, then they'll always be getting things wrong. And you want them to always be getting things right, have success. We all like to be told we've done something well. Don't oversay. They do a little something and say, oh, you're brilliant, it's wonderful, Save that vocabulary for something that really is absolutely magnificent. This is no different. Learning a letter sound is no different to you pointing to a dog and say, there's a dog, that's dog, this is cat, and this is your finger. So there's no difference. They look at the shape of the letter and they have to memorize it and say the sound. So it's not brilliance. But just encourage them. Oh, that's good. Well done. You know, can you do this? Can you do that? And so on. So take care, but look down here, this technique for a skill. This is good if you're going to teach a real skill, and blending and segmenting are real skills. So first of all, you do it, you demonstrate it. Then perhaps you do it and they do it together. We do it. And then last of all, you do it. So this way is a fun way of developing that auditory skill. You know, look, watch, I'll do it for you. Cut at cat. Now let's do it together. Cut at cat. So you've got the word in front of them, you're pointing to the letters. And now you do it on your own and they do it on their own. And so gradually they tune in, you know, some will know straight away and others, oh, cut at, cut, you know, so they won't be there. But with a little gentle daily practice, just a few, they'll get there. Same as with hearing the sounds in words. Do it together and then let them go on their own. I'll do it first and then together and on their own. A very useful technique, but the thing is it makes them succeed. And that's really, really important when you're teaching. Here we've got, this shows the power of learning the code. With knowledge of those 18 letter sounds that we teach first of all, we teach them to form those letters correctly and to say the sounds. And with that knowledge and with the ability to blend, they can read these words. Now, there's actually 670 words in my word bank. Some of them aren't terribly suitable for young ones, but there are a lot of little words that they can then do. Hop, hop, ag, tag, ik, kick. So very powerful with a small bit of knowledge that takes a little time to teach, the letters up to B, the B, they can have access to a huge number of words. And here is the first digraph, the first two letters making one sound. We've got the A and the I, where the two together they say A. And then you've got the words for them to practice with. And here are the words from the word bank. You see here, afraid is underlined because it's not pure. We don't say afraid, we swallow it, we go afraid. So that is why you would do that one after some of the others. So there's always something unusual about the others. This isn't a problem for reading, but it's more for spelling. If you want to spell afraid, how do you spell Of course, you know, it's a swallowed vowel. It's called a schwa, a swallowed vowel. So the is more difficult, isn't it? But what happens is after they've blended it a few times, afraid, afraid, about, around, they get used to that going at the front. But of course, spelling is harder, much harder, because you've got to learn which letter goes with which sound. And as there are several ways of representing each sound, that becomes more difficult. But on the whole, once you've got the reading going, most children will pick up a lot of spelling from their reading. This is typical of the type of things you'll want to be doing. In each lesson, you'll want to ask your child to say the sounds to the letters you've taught them. Not perhaps always all of them, some that you'll think they'll know, and you'll just do the ones that you're not so sure on. In Jolly Phonics, in teaching in the classroom, we introduce the sound through a story. So for the S, we have a story about the snake, and then there's an action for the snake. So the children then go like this, like a snake. That's the action. So they learn the shape of the letter, the sound of it, and the action. And the action is very useful because then when you hold up the letter the next day for the whole class to do, the children can do the action and say the sound. And that's the fun and the multisensory part, which is very effective and is particularly developed because with a whole class of children, you've got to keep them attentive and on task and doing something. So actions are particularly important. the multisensory side with each letter sound. And every letter sound has an action, and you'll see it on all the materials. How much you do that as a parent with one child, it's not so essential, but it is a multisensory thing, and they do enjoy doing little actions. So you might like to do that so that when you point to the letter, they say the sound and do the action. So you'll be keeping them active. So it's up to you how much you want to use that, because it was developed for whole class teaching, but I'm sure it is useful for home teaching as well. We like to introduce through a story. You don't have to, but it provides the language skills, helps the children, and of course then they remember. Oh, I remember that A. I couldn't. The story is that Inky doesn't, or a B doesn't hear very well, and says A. I can't hear, and so that's the action linked to the A sound. And then they think, oh yes, it's that A, isn't it? And that helps them to remember how to write it as well. So very powerful, introduced through a story. In the story comes a sound. Then we demonstrate the formation, make sure that it's done correctly. We use the Sassoon font, so the A is a nice round up and down, and we use a joining tail, but we also have it in print. So it's up to countries and schools what they use, so it's available in both. I like the joining tail because when you come to joining writing, it's there and you can join easily to the next letter. And you want to blend in every session, 5 to 10 words, and identify the sounds in 5 to 10 words as well. So, and then dictate a few letter sounds and a couple of words, and you've got a nice little lesson. And they develop their skills. You might want to make yourself, and this is available for you, that you can download. You can make your own little box for the children. And when you think your child knows a letter sound, it can go in the box. And then they can say the sounds to Daddy when he comes home, or Granny, or whatever. So you've got the box. Put in there the ones that you feel pretty sure they're good at, because what you're doing is revising and making sure it's absolutely automatic, that knowledge. And that needs plenty of overlearning, plenty of revision, and it's to get fluency rather than to teach it. So it's very handy for them to have their little box. They put their letters in their box when they think they really know it, and then you can go through it at any time. So a useful thing, and that you can download as well. We do have word boxes that I've made, and you can actually make your own. It's available on the Jolly Learning website, so that here in this box, the yellow, the words on the yellow background are using the G sound, and any letter sounds that went beforehand. So then you've got at your fingertips a nice little pile of words that you can drop on the table and ask your child to pick them up and read some of them. So very, very handy. You just follow the instructions on that website and you will find it's worth it. Just get card, not too thick card, and print it off and cut it up. There's some helpful hints. Basically revision all the time to overload and make sure you've got those letter sounds known so well. You must get them fluent and automatic. What I mean by automatic is, I liken it to driving a car. So imagine that when you started driving, the gears just dominated your whole driving experience, and it was so difficult. And then gradually you get used to it, and then gradually after a while you don't think about it too much, and after a year you hardly think of it at all. The brain is kind of doing it without even being aware of it, and that's the same with blending. The brain is doing it with hardly being aware of it. So then you can concentrate on the driving, and with blending, once you've got that automatic blending, you can concentrate on understanding the story and so on. Be careful when you say the letter sounds. Get it as purely as possible. Some you can't say in a pure way, like d and b. There's an on the end. Just try not to say it too loudly. So, say the sounds as quickly as possible. A little emphasis on the first one helps. So b, ed, bed. Blend every day a little, do it together to start off with. Again, identifying the sounds, but make sure they are confident at blending. You've had plenty of words to go through before even expecting them to do the harder thing of reading books. So the better you get them before asking them to read a book, the more effective it will be and the more they will love reading. If we make it too hard when they come to the book and they're having to sound out every word, it's far too early. You've done it too quickly. So hold off. It takes resistance, but it's well worth it. And then here's my website. I made this a few years ago, and I've put everything I've learned on it. I've made little films because I wanted people to be able to understand the sounds, and it's very difficult to read from writing. So I'm now going to try and toggle and find the real website. So if you hold on a bit, let's see if we can get here. There we are. So you can see now it's active, the website. And this is completely free, very easy to access. You just go on. It's called Teaching Children to Read and Write. So it's www.tcrw.co.uk. And you can see it up here, tcrw.co.uk. It's got everything you need. So this first column, you've got a little introductory page, which I say about myself a bit, then an overview, so you can see what everything is. And then bit by bit, I go over the teaching. So it's exactly, and as you go over it, I provide materials, the letter sounds, so you can download those. You can download words that use the letter sounds. You've got a lot of, and some paper that some lines you can write on and so on. So you've got a lot of things, and bit by bit, you can learn and understand how synthetic phonics works. And then by the time they get to the end, they will have learnt the really important things. Now, if you, we know that a lot of children do have difficulties with reading. That's still worldwide, and particularly in English-speaking countries where they've been taught whole words instead of decoding. We need to understand what are the causes. So I do quite a few bits here. This is well worth studying. You know, it's not exactly Walt Disney, I must admit, but it's all there. So study it. And there's a transcript as well. So if you want to read it, you can read it. But basically I cover why they have these problems. And then we've got preventing reading problems. Now that's a useful one. If you can get in early and prevent it. Now at home, you've got a much better chance of preventing it because you can see instantly who's struggling and who's not, whereas that's much harder in a whole big class. Then this is more for schools, identifying reading problems. So this is for a child who has had teaching in another school and is struggling, how you deal with that. Here I've done a bit of guidance for parents, so you can have a look and see how, you know, some points that I make and see what, whether you agree with it or not, but that's what I think. In the preventing reading and writing problems, right at the bottom here, we've got evidence for effectiveness. Now, it is important that we should be accountable and that what we say is effective. And that's what's been missing in education for a long time. And standardized reading tests and what works and research and everything should be listened to. And here is my favorite piece of research by Dr. Marlin Grant in the UK. And it's well worth reading her research. And basically, She explains exactly how they managed to have far fewer children in difficulties, hardly any. And the test for dyslexia, whether they qualified for dyslexia, none of them did, because they were taught in such a way that the dyslexic tendencies, the type of brains that dyslexic children have, had been overcome. All children need this teaching, but those that have got dyslexic tendencies need it more. So it's well worth reading that research. Then here I've got phonic knowledge. Understanding how this code works is so useful. So I've got whole sets of understanding that code. And if you're really wanting to seriously teach the children to read and write at home, you need to understand it and you need to study it. Vowels, how they work. The vowels are quite useful, and they can be useful hints and guidance for spelling as well. So well worth learning. Down here we've got drop, swap and double. Lots of very useful rules there. And then I've also got decodable readers here. Now we have provided decodable readers, but you might find you need more decodable readers. And here I mention several. All you have to make sure is that they have, in the words in those books, they have the letter sounds that have been taught and the tricky words. So make sure and help your children. If you see it's a word that they can't blend, well then you can easily see that and then you can help them. So these books, some of them are lovely as well. So do have a look and see there. Resources here. I haven't done so well on this. I really need to do some more work on this, but here is an audio guide. So if you want to know the pronunciation of the sounds, that links you straight to the Jolly Learning website, and there they are available. And there's materials about the Jolly Phonics materials, and I've still got some bits to sort out there. Down here, the Sue Lloyd. And I've tried to explain everything about how I got there, and about Sarah Wernham and Chris Jolly and everybody else. So for interest. Blogs. I should do more blogs. I just keep running out of time. But you can see the blogs there, and you can join and receive newsletters. But again, I keep running out of time. But it's very useful, this website, and I hope that if you've forgotten anything or you're not sure of anything that I have said, you will be able to find it all there. And remember, the materials are available. If I go here, you can see step 1. You can see here, you can play the video. Down here, you can see video transcript. So you can click on that and see the transcript. There it is. It can take you to other videos quite quickly. There are downloads, lots of materials available, and there are some links. Here there are no links, but here if you look at all the links on the website, you can see all of them that are available. So there is a lot of information. It is completely free. I wanted it to be free, although it cost me quite a bit to do it. I wanted it to be free because I wanted people to understand there is a way of stopping children failing. And if we do things the right way, it makes it much easier. And I hope that people will find that useful. So now I'll stop sharing, and I think there might be just time to show you this activity book, which I think you might find interesting. So let's see if we can see, have we got, okay. So let's see if I can hold up the activity book. If I can, oh, here we are. There it is. I'll try and get this so you can see. Here we've got guidance for parents and so on. And here we've got the start of a story, and that gives the characters and everything. I hope it's clear. Here was the page I showed you already, but now you can start to see the activities. Here we've got, they make the letters out of cress. So you cut out the shape of the letter with a bit of blotting paper or something that absorbs water, wet it, and then sow some seeds on there. So that's a way of just doing something fun linked to the letter and helps the children to learn that. Here we've got a sticker page, and the children have got stickers in the book that you can cut out. So here's your stickers. You just pull it out from the middle, and there it tells you exactly what to do. The children have to go to the stickers page and choose the pictures that have a S sound in them. So, and then they stick them on. Then the next letter sound is the A. So you're teaching the shape of the letter, the sound, you've got the story, you've got the action if you want it, and then some practice there, they can do that. And then some activities. For this one, there's a maze, and they have to take their finger and follow the maze and try to get down to where the ants are having their food. So it's a fun activity. And here we've got the letter sounds and pictures. And if it's got that sound in, you then join it to the picture. So sound and picture matching. Here we've got the T sound. Again, the same type of teaching, and they have to learn it. And of course, if they haven't got those sounds, don't race on. You know, practice that, leave a few days, come back. That is your luxury as a parent. Here we've got more stickers. So they have to go to the sticker page and find out choose the letters to match the pictures for the sounds. Here, the blue ones, the blue star is for the T, the green for the S, and the red for the A, and then they have to stick it onto the right letter. Then here there's jigsaw letters, so they can cut them up and then they make little jigsaw pictures from them. Now you can either photocopy that, and if you can't or don't want to, you can cut it up. And then, yes, can you all see? Yes, I hope. So, you know, you can choose which one. Here, you've got several words, and they've all got that sound in them. They've got to choose the right letter. So another sticker page. Here, they don't do this page until they've learned all the sounds. So it's the last thing you do, but basically you stick the right letter on for the sound. Here we've got the I, and the same kind of teaching for introducing it. But here we've got an activity, so they do some little ink prints with their fingerprints, and they put their prints on the letter. Here they make little pictures using their fingerprints, paint or ink or whatever. It's just, you know, little I. They can make the sound as they say, as they put it on the I. Here we've got the P sound, again, forming the letter. And here we've got more sticker page, so they've got to find the objects that have got the P in and stick them there. And here another, which one has the T in it, and they stick a star on it. Nice and clear. There's the N, so you've got your 6-letter sounds. And here you can stick pictures on that have got that sound, put them in the net. And then we've got pencil trails, so they get pencil control and help going left to right there. And here you could photocopy these or cut them up if you want to cut the book up when you've done the teaching. And you can do all sorts of little activities here, from pointing to the letters or using them as flashcards, or playing a game of pairs. And as you turn the letter over, you say the sound, or making little words. So you've got lots of things you can do with those letters, which you can get off my website as well. So you can choose which way you do it. And here, practicing all the letters writing. And on this side, we have words and pictures. And they have to blend the word and choose the right picture when they've cut it up. And there, of course, is that page, and that's got the words. So there we are. It's a very fun way of doing it. And hopefully that will be helpful to you. So you've got a website to choose from. You've got materials that you know a bit about. And if you choose to do it, have fun. Don't get too serious about it. And just enjoy being with your child and helping them. So, are we there now? Shall I?
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. Can we take some questions if you allow?
Oh, yes, yes, sure. Yes.
There are some questions in the chat box. A parent is asking that they're introducing, you know, they're doing blending. But when it comes to, practicing blending, they don't have enough games to do that. Could you share some of them with them, please?
Games?
Blending games or blending activities?
Well, there are materials, but you can make your own, really. I mean, they just need to be able to do it. I don't think you need a huge amount of games. You perhaps could play the game of pairs, and you have a word and a letter, and as they turn over the letter, they say the sound, and then they've got to turn over another card and hopefully get the pair. So that's something they could do. They've got to sound it out. You know, you can make a little post box, and if you blend it correctly, you can put it in the post box. And if not, we have a practice. We practice that until they can do it, and so on. So you can make up anything, really. Just go for providing enough examples for them to practice with. So you could make your own list and go down a list. You could have them on card, little words. You can do the dictation, and once you've dictated the word and they've had a go at writing it, then they can blend it to see if they were correct. So there's lots of little things. It's the principles that's so important. So yeah.
So if you're introducing word families, like cat, bat, man, is this the right way of doing
it? That's perfectly fine as well, yes. But they need to be able to work out the word from the single sounds, first of all. And then, if you have a whole set of words like cat, bat, hat, if they've got all those sounds, it just makes them, they start to use analogy. They start to see there's a pattern to it. So it doesn't come at the beginning particularly, but once they've learnt those letter sounds, and when you come to the more complicated ones, the E-I-G-H with the A, we do in the teaching of Jolly Grammar, we do provide the set of words that use that letter sound. So it is very useful. It's when they use analogy and they see the pattern, but they do need to be able to identify every single letter sound. There was a way of teaching onset and rhyme. So they learned, first of all, the onset, which is the consonant blends, and then the rhyme. But that takes too much memory, and research shows it's not nearly as good as going down to the single phonemes. So yeah, just enjoy that, yeah.
Yeah, I have another question here on the chat box, which is asking that, can we teach phonics in alphabetic order?
You could, but then you would have to make up your own words that link to the sound, the order that you have taught them in. And what is the point? I mean, we chose the first 6 letter sounds because you could make the most words with them. So that's what we wanted to get into, reading and being able to read and write. So there's not a great advantage in particularly doing it with the alphabet letters. And then, of course, you've still got to go on to the all those digraphs and different ways of representing the sounds. So it's just an old-fashioned way of doing it, really, and it didn't benefit a lot of children. So, I mean, if you did it with the synthetic phonics way and you did do those, it didn't ask the children to read something unless you've given them the tools, but why take the trouble? I took the trouble to write the word bank. So that's taken the time. So, you know, you've got it there. So it's the same. There are other synthetic phonics programs, and so long as they follow the principles, they'll be effective too. Then people have to choose what they think they would like best to use and what materials are available and so on. But it's understanding the principles that are so important. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Initially, somebody asked how Jolly Phonics is different from other phonic programs.
There are other phonics programs. I think ours is probably more child friendly because we've got the actions. If you look at what we do, you can see it's come from ordinary teachers, because we know when you've got a large class of children, you've got to keep them active. And the teaching, we've got the actions, as I said before, that we do. That helps with the revising of the letter sounds. We also do air writing and showing the children in the air how to form the letters. So the teacher in front shows them exactly how to do it, air writing. They've got to do it in mirror writing, so that's a bit tricky. And if they're not sure, it's better to turn round and do it not in mirror writing. So it's important they learn that. But then you see the children are following with their hand, and you can see if they're paying attention, and you can see that they are doing it correctly. With a large group, with blending, of course, they've got to say the sounds, so you can see if their mouth's moving or not. So you've got them, they're doing something. And with the segmenting, they're holding up a finger for each sound. So there you are, you've got them, the activities. And that's why I think actually ours is a very, very good program, because it's come out of the classroom. Most other programs are created by people who haven't been teaching at the bottom, who think this sounds nice and that sounds nice, but it's not as practical or as effective. But there are some good ones around. And I do mention them on my website. I go through quite a few of them. So if you're interested in that, if you look at the resources section, you can the blending, the phonic knowledge one, it's in that section. So I do cover it.
All right, thank you. I have another question, which is, at what age should we introduce words to them? I mean, after doing one group, or the two groups, or how many groups should we start with words?
Well, you can't start until you've got 3. Because then you've got the words. If you can start then, you know, with those 2 words, sat and at. You can do it together, you know, so you don't necessarily have to see if they can do it, but you'll gradually get the hint that they can do it or not. Just do it together, or do it on your own, and then they do it with you. So you get a feel for it. So go straight from, if you've got one of those that are naturally good at it, some are, then you know you're going to have an easy time. And you can then just introduce, as I introduce the words. I just don't go over board too much, you know. It's tempting as parents to try and, try and get hundreds done, you know, instead of just keeping it to 5 or 10, you know, that kind of thing. Keep it nibble, 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 rather than do it often, but not overdo it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've come to the end of this workshop today. Do we have any more questions from the audience, please? The last call. No, I think we've answered all of them. Thank you for making us all understand that how important it is to crack the code of language with this step-by-step beautiful approach. And I just love the way you shared the tips and tricks for the parents for homeschooling as well. I thank Sue for the partnership in communicating this important information today with the audience. Please visit Sue's website, which is www.tcrw.co.uk. And also all our products also available at sareducation.com. Please contact us or write us for any kind of books that you need. I also want to thank the audience, as this workshop wouldn't be complete without you. The hundreds of concerned parents, educators, and professionals who work on a daily basis with young children. for taking out time for us and joining us for this workshop. We have another workshop coming up on the 10th of October for Jolly Grammar. We hope to see you there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sue. And also, would you like to add, Sue, anything before we wrap up today? Anything that you would like to add before we wrap up today?
No, I just enjoy it. Learn about it and enjoy it.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed your workshop today. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye then. Bye.